Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was my favorite cartoon as a kid. I'm talking about the original 1987 version. It aired for almost 10 years, and I had all the toys and played all the video games. When the show finally stopped airing, I was really upset because, unlike a lot of cartoons at the time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles didn't air reruns that often. In fact, despite the show's huge popularity, from September 1997 to July 2023, not a single episode of the show aired in the United States. Luckily for me, I had lots of episodes on VHS tapes. Burger King even sold episodes of the show. I begged my parents to go there as a kid every weekend so I could get a different tape. By the summer of 1997, I had moved on from the Ninja Turtles and was now interested in the Power Rangers. But I started to see advertisements for a new show that caught my attention. And that show was called Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation.
Be there for the excitement.
Ninja-licious!
Be there for the fun.
Dudes with lunches!
Be there for the action. The live-action TV series.
I love being a Ninja Turtle!
Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation.
Anybody ready for pizza?
I couldn't wait to watch this show, especially since it wasn't a cartoon, it was live action, just like the movie series. As a kid, I only got a chance to watch a few episodes, and I don't remember it being that bad. I even had a few of the toys. To my surprise, though, that show was canceled after just one season. Only 26 episodes were ever made. And the show is now universally considered by fans to be the worst incarnation of the Turtles. When people debate which version of the show is the best, sometimes Next Mutation isn't even mentioned. It's almost like the show has been completely forgotten. But does Next Mutation really deserve all the hate? I decided to go back and watch every episode of the show and review it for myself to see if it truly is as bad as people say it is. The title Next Mutation was inspired by the name of an unproduced fourth Turtles film. In that movie, the Turtles were supposed to mutate again and become even stronger. They were also supposed to have a fifth turtle named Kirby. April was going to turn evil, and Casey Jones would have some type of electrical powers. Aside from the title and the inclusion of a fifth turtle, the show doesn't share any other similarities with that film. Even though it's called The Next Mutation, the Turtles never actually mutated again. Also, unlike most incarnations of the Turtles, the first episode is not an origin story because it was assumed that at this point, everyone that was watching the show would already know who the Turtles are. So the show was meant to be a spiritual successor to the original cartoon. So before diving in, we need to take a look back at the last few seasons of the 1987 series. And there were some big changes that happened at the end of that show. Beginning with season 8, the tone of the show started to change. It became less reliant on humor and more action-focused. Most notably, the opening credit sequence was completely redone. It now featured clips from the first live-action film, which made no sense because the stories of the live-action films were not connected to the cartoon at all. And the iconic theme song was also changed. It still used the same lyrics, or at least some of them, but it was slowed down and was way more repetitive. I hated this, because to me the theme song was the best part of that show. I still to this day remember every word of the 1987 theme song. Fans online have nicknamed these last 3 seasons the Red Sky seasons, since in the background of each episode the sky appears red. And most of these fans also agree that they are the worst seasons of the show. At the end of season 8, Shredder, Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady, who were the arch enemies of the Turtles, were written out of the show. Beginning with season 9, a new enemy was introduced, an alien named Lord Dreg, who would become the new main antagonist for the remainder of the series. This season also introduced a teenager named Carter, who teamed up with the Turtles. Unlike April O'Neil, Carter knew martial arts and could fight alongside the Turtles. I didn't really like Carter that much, but I didn't hate him either. He reminded me a little bit of Kino, the pizza delivery boy from the second live-action film, Secrets of the Ooze. There was also a season-long arc where the Turtles start to mutate uncontrollably into incredible Hulk-like creatures. Even Carter starts mutating and eventually leaves the turtles and goes into the future to find a cure for his mutations. I often wonder if the plot of this season was actually based on that unmade Next Mutation movie. In the series finale, Lord Dreg is defeated by being locked away in another dimension. David Wise, who had written over 100 episodes of the show, including the initial 5 episodes of the first season, was not involved with this final season of the Turtles and had moved on to other projects. The Next Mutation would be produced by Saban Entertainment, which was the most successful children's television company at the time. They have been responsible for creating shows like the Power Rangers and the Big Bad Beetleborgs. Both those shows featured superhero teams who defeated a series of different enemies each week. It seemed like the Turtles were in good hands, but then the first episode premiered and the outrage started. This episode begins with a cold opening somewhere in China, which immediately threw me for a loop because I always associated the Turtles with Japan. Then the opening sequence begins, and to say it would be bad would be an understatement. The whole thing looks like a commercial for Chuck E. Cheese, but instead of a rat, you have turtles. Raphael is patrolling the streets on a motorcycle and immediately gets into a fight with some members of the Foot Clan, and Splinter, who apparently has psychic powers, can sense that Raphael is in danger. He ends his chess game that he's having with a blind man and goes to help, where he single-handedly scares all of the Foot Clan away.
Attack! Hey!
The rest of the Turtles show up in the new Turtle van, which appears to be a
Just
Humvee.
can't stay out of trouble, can you, Raph?
Man, looks like everybody...
The title of this pilot episode is called East Meets West, and it has 5 parts, which aired on Friday, so it took 5 weeks just for this story to get told, an entire month. When the Power Rangers aired the famous 5-part Green with Evil story, it aired a new episode every day after school. Having to wait an entire week for the next episode of a 30-minute show just made it easier to forget. I think having a new episode each day would have probably been a better move, but the problem with that was that Next Mutation was only slated to have 26 episodes. So if they aired a new episode each weekday, then the entire season would be done in less than 2 months. Saban's other shows at the time, Power Rangers and Big Bad Beetleborgs, were actually airing new episodes every day. But unlike the Turtles, those had a lot more episodes. Power Rangers Turbo had 50 episodes and Big Bad Beetleborgs had 53. They would have multiple new episodes a week, and there were reruns here and there to allow people to catch up. Next Mutation cost a lot more to make, so it didn't have the luxury of being able to produce as many episodes. Plus, Saban had to film the Turtles in-house. For those of you that don't know, the fight scenes from Power Rangers and Beetleborgs were filmed in Japan as part of totally different shows. Saban then took the footage from those shows and filmed scenes in America to go along with them. He was able to produce a ton of episodes because it only took half the work, but for Next Mutation, it would all have to be done from scratch. I think Saban was hoping that kids would be so starved for new episodes of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that they would have no problem waiting patiently for the new episodes to trickle out. After Splinter gets done lecturing the Turtles, we see Shredder, who looks awful.
To continue to expand, then the Green Menace must be crushed. Now go! Prove yourselves!
Destroy the freaks.
The Shredder from the movies looks so intimidating, but this Shredder looks like a kid about to go trick-or-treating. Splinter then uses his psychic powers again to talk to a friend in China, who warns him about the dragons. Apparently there were a group of dragons that were locked away in another dimension years ago, and they have escaped into our realm and plan to take over the Earth. This man, whose name is revealed to be Chung, sends his adopted daughter to New York to help. Splinter and Chung are then attacked in this psychedelic dream world by the dragons, and both become ill. It is revealed at the end of part 1 that Chung's daughter is actually a female turtle. This was supposed to be a huge plot twist, but she was clearly visible in the opening credits. At the beginning of part 2, Chung's daughter shows up at the turtles' lair in New York City and subdues all 4 of them with ease. She then reveals herself to them and says that originally when the turtles fell into the sewers, there were 5 of them in the bowl, but she floated away to Chinatown where Chung found her. She's given the nickname Venus and fills the turtles in on what happened to Splinter and her father. Just like Splinter and Chung, Venus can also enter the dream world, where she sees Splinter has been captured. Venus can also apparently read minds and discovers that the Shredder is planning on attacking their lair, the location of which they have discovered. If you remember at the end of the first Turtles movie, the Foot Clan discovers where the Turtles are living, and they have to relocate to a new lair in the second film. Even though the Next Mutation was supposed to be a follow-up to the cartoon, it seems to share a lot more similarities with the movies, except Shredder was clearly defeated at the end of the second film. So I've pretty much accepted already that this show exists in its own separate universe.
Very footful. Too footful.
The Turtles decide to go to Shredder's hideout and catch the Foot Clan by surprise, and a giant fight ensues.
Hey, what's up, my brother?
How dare you?
Just as the Shredder is about to finish them off, Venus uses her magic on the Shredder and easily defeats him, and Leonardo orders the Foot to disband.
Insane! You were never his family. Shredder is totally without honor! The Foot is no more! The Foot is dead!
I hate the idea that Venus can do magic because it ruins the suspense. For years, I watched the Turtles fight Shredder, and he was almost always able to defeat them in combat. But here comes this strange new turtle who has never seen Shredder before, and she's able to defeat him in a few seconds. She doesn't even kill him, she just makes him see the error of his ways.
You are finished.
In part 3, Venus attempts to teach the other turtles how to enter the dreamscape, which she seems to be able to do in just a day or two. I find it strange that Splinter never ever told the Turtles about this dream world. At first I thought that maybe it was a difficult technique to master, but apparently it doesn't take that long to learn it all. When the Turtles enter the dream world, they find Splinter and meet the Dragon Lord and his minion Wick, who looks like a reject from the last Muppet movie. It was actually Jim Henson's company that created the original turtle suits in the first live-action films, but from what I understand, his workshop did not supply the costumes for this series.
So, you're just gonna let us split?
Baloney.
What's the catch?
I thought it might be amusing to hunt you. We get so little exercise.
Also, apparently the dragons just let Splinter go, which raises the question of why they even bothered capturing him in the first place. It's explained that he just wanted to hunt the turtles down for fun, and also by allowing them to escape, they could just follow them out of the dream world, but it just doesn't add up because there's people coming and going in and out of the dream world all the time. They could have just followed anyone out. The dragons catch up to the turtles in the park, and they fight for the first time. And of course, Venus is able to use her magic to save the day. This time, instead of shooting lightning out of her hands like a Sith Lord, she casts a spell on the Dragon Lord's feet to keep him from crushing Splinter. While they're back at the lair, everyone is depressed, and Leonardo tells Splinter that he doesn't know if they can win against these dragons. Why not, though? I mean, I watched the battle, and it looked like the turtles were destroying them. In part 4, the dragons begin gathering animal bones that they can use to make into some kind of potion that's going to make them invincible. Donatello's spy satellites find where the dragons are hiding, and Raphael goes after them in an attempt to fight them alone. At first, Splinter does not allow the turtles to go off and help Ralph, but then he changes his mind and allows the turtles to go and rescue him.
Come on, Scaly.
They try to fight the Dragon Lord, but then retreat when their attacks are unable to damage him. Although Venus never used her magic on him and the turtles never actually tried to stab him or anything, they just kept hitting his armor, which of course won't damage him. Also, we find out that the turtle Humvee has a gun on it, but it only shoots fire repellent.
Safely secure. Now let's see what happens when I hit this button.
Turtles then go to the zoo to fight the dragons again, and Venus reveals she has even more magic tricks. She has powder that can reveal what happened a few minutes ago, and she can make herself turn invisible.
I am invisible, dragon. You see nothing.
I wonder why she can't teach the other turtles these tricks. She was able to teach them how to enter the dream world in just a couple of days, so shouldn't they be able to learn these lightning attacks too? The dragons also have these mechanical spiders that can give them super strength. During their fight at the zoo, the turtles are able to steal one of the spiders.
Now, let's see what makes these dragons tick.
In the fifth and final part of the series premiere, the dragons discover that the turtles have some method of spying on them and decide to use it to their advantage to lure the turtles into a trap. They head for an aquarium, and the turtles, seeing on Donatello's spy satellite, follow them. Despite knowing that the turtles are coming, the dragons fail to set any kind of trap, and the dragons are once again defeated, and the turtles even manage to actually hurt the Dragon Lord. After finishing this 5-part series premiere, I can see why critics and fans hate the show. It's far from good, but I'll admit that I'm kinda entertained. I actually enjoy the scenes where the turtles are just hanging out around the lair. It reminds me of a sitcom. I watched a lot of shows where I could hardly get through the first episode, and this isn't one of them. It's a bad show, but it's not bad enough to make me want to turn it off. In fact, I recently watched a few seasons of Power Rangers, and I'll say that so far, Next Mutation is better than most of those Power Ranger seasons. The next episode is called The Staff of Bukai, and all of a sudden the Dragon Lord has a new ability. He can reach back into time. He creates a rift that leads to ancient China and manages to steal a magic staff that can neutralize Venus's magic. As Venus is trying to show Leonardo how to do magic, something goes wrong and Venus is unable to control her chi.
It tickles! What's happening?
Something's wrong. The chi energy is slipping back into the universal flow.
Oh, it's me!
Donatello creates a spy plane, and Venus coats the spy plane with chi. I'm so confused now because a few moments ago Venus couldn't control her chi because of the Staff of Bukai. Now she can control her chi, and she's sprinkling her chi on a plane. At the end of the episode, the turtles face off against the dragons again, and the Dragon Lord tricks Venus into using her magic. He zaps her with the staff, and at first it looks like Venus is finished, but then she overwhelms the dragon and zaps them all back to their base. So it turns out the staff just isn't strong enough. So the whole episode was about a staff that was supposed to stop Venus from using her powers, and the staff doesn't actually work. Also, it's never explained why Venus couldn't control her powers. Earlier in the episode, when she was training Leonardo, she couldn't control her chi. All of a sudden, she can now. At this point, Fox began airing shows out of order. For example, the next episode produced was titled Silver and Gold, but the next episode that Fox aired was titled All in the Family. I'm going to watch the episodes as they were originally aired, so that means I'll be watching All in the Family next, which was the first episode not to feature the Dragons or the Foot Clan as the main antagonists. Instead, the turtles face off against Simon Bonesteel, a hunter that is clearly inspired by Kraven from Spider-Man. He has captured an endangered sea turtle, which is found and rescued by the gang, but then they accidentally drop the sea turtle just moments after rescuing it. And then they have to go back and find it all over again. But as incompetent as the turtles are in this episode, Bonesteel is even more incompetent. He's portrayed as a rambling psychopath, but at no time does it seem like the turtles are in danger at all. They also let Bonesteel get away. Like they literally just walk away from him even though they clearly had him outmatched and could have knocked him out and called the police. And at the end of the episode, they talk about how worried they are now that Bonesteel knows they exist and could potentially attack them at any time.
He knows we exist.
He'll be hunting us.
Well, yeah, that's why you should have turned him in. In Silver and Gold, Michelangelo is fooling around in the sewers and meets a talking ape dressed in a lime green suit.
I give up, don't shoot, I'm just a little turtle.
Cool your jets, kid. You want?
The ape is named Silver, and he and his gang are responsible for a series of bank robberies. The bank robbers are all dressed like 1920s gangsters. Donatello figures out where Silver is going to strike next. Apparently, there's a vault in New York City that has more gold in it than Fort Knox, but despite this place allegedly having really good security, the turtles are able to climb up onto the roof completely unseen and descend down a skylight. Silver's gang is also able to walk right in unseen. Apparently, they have some kind of security jamming device, but you would think that this gold depository that they're breaking into would have at least a guard post somewhere. Venus ends up locked in the vault, which is wired to explode. But not to worry, even though there's a billion possible combinations to this lock, Donatello is able to get her out. Because apparently the combination just happens to be Donatello's birthday and he gets it on the first try. I mean, really, how am I supposed to be invested in a show when they do stuff like that? In Turtles Night Out, it starts off with Michelangelo driving around in the Turtle Humvee, and he's running some kind of pirated radio station. Michelangelo walks into a pizza parlor without any kind of disguise and attempts to order 6 large pizzas, but runs into Bone Steel, the Craven knockoff that they let get away. Mikey single handedly defeats him and continues his radio show like nothing happened. He tells his listeners that they're going to hold a rave in order to raise money for animals. He tells people to come dressed as animals. Bone Steel, who Mikey let get away again, hears the broadcast and decides to show up at the rave as well. A street gang called the Unknowables also hears about the rave and decides to stop it. The Unknowables have to be the least intimidating gang I have ever seen.
Nobody raises money in this neighborhood, unless the Unknowables see a cut.
Even though the episode is silly, it's probably my favorite one so far. The scenes at the rave where the turtles are mingling with humans is hilarious. The Unknowables and Bone Steel fail to stop the rave, and at the end, Mikey announces that they raised $1,200 for the Animal Relief Fund. In episode 10, the turtles meet Dr. Queese. Queese is a stereotypical mad scientist, and at the beginning of the episode, Donatello and Michelangelo attend a lecture given by Dr. Queese at a really strange college where everyone is dressed in brown robes for some reason. At the lecture, Queese is abducted by the dragons, but instead of just grabbing him, they teleport a giant ray gun and blast him first. After seeing the turtles face off against a giant gangster gorilla and a crazy poacher, I'm actually glad to see that the dragons are back. Donatello tries to convince the turtles to help him rescue Dr. Queese, but they all refuse to help. I thought these guys were supposed to be superheroes. When Donatello shows up to rescue him alone, Dr. Queese suddenly decides that he wants to team up with the dragons. Luckily, the turtles show up in time to rescue him. I kinda like the character Queese. He reminds me a bit of Baxter Stockman, which leads me to question why they just didn't use Stockman to begin with. Part of me thinks the reason why Saban chose to create all these new characters was simply to sell new toys. After all, that was how the Ninja Turtles cartoon made most of its money, and Saban was already doing that with the Power Rangers. I think Saban thought that most kids already had the Shredder and Stockman toys, so he should create new bad guys so the kids would have to go out and buy them. I actually fell for that because I did have the Dragon Lord and Venus action figures. One action figure I never bought was Silver, who regrettably returned in episode 11, Windfall. Silver breaks into a man's house, and this man just happens to have a winning lottery ticket. Instead of giving the lottery ticket to Silver, the man throws it out the window and it falls into the sewers, where Michelangelo finds it and discovers he's won $112 million.
I won! I won!
Silver and the gang show up at the turtle lair and defeat the turtles and steal the ticket. Yes, that's right, they actually beat the turtles. You mean to tell me that the turtles are capable of beating up a bunch of ninja dragons, but they can't even fight a group of humans? This just makes me hate Silver and his gang even more. Splinter tells the turtles that they should just let Silver have the ticket, since the turtles can't cash it in anyway. Really, Splinter, you're just gonna let a gang have $112 million. The turtles ignore Splinter and head over to Silver's hideout, where this time they are easily able to defeat him. You would think that since the turtles know where Silver's hideout is, they would report it to the police, but nope, they never do. Splinter still won't let the turtles turn in the ticket. So instead, they return the ticket to the rightful owner. The next episode, Truth or Consequences, serves as a mid-season finale. The Dragon Lord catches Wick listening to Mikey's radio show and gets upset, but then he decides to get Wick to call the show in an attempt to trick Mikey into thinking that the dragons are going to revolt against the Dragon Lord. The turtles don't believe it, but luckily Donatello just happened to create a lie detector that day.
Now, let's check it out on my lie detector.
I'm a big fan of the show.
Remember, green is for truth, red is for jive.
He gets Mikey to play a tape recording of Wick's call, and the lie detector says that Wick is telling the truth. Mikey shows up at the dragon's base, and they pretend to like him, but eventually capture him. The turtles show up to rescue him and throw their weapons down, pretending to want to join forces with the Dragon Lord, saying, "Hey, we're all reptiles." Donatello then gives him a staff as a gift, which explodes when the Dragon Lord tries to use it and allows them time to rescue Mikey. I don't get the point of the exploding staff because it only incapacitated the Dragon Lord for a few seconds. He gets right back up like nothing ever happened. I know I criticize Saban and Fox for only airing the Turtles once a week as opposed to airing Power Rangers and Beetleborgs almost every day, but the ratings for Next Mutation were actually pretty good up to this point. There were a few times that the show was actually number one in its time slot. During this time, Power Rangers Turbo also ended its run. That incarnation of Power Rangers was the lowest rated series that Saban had produced up to that point, and critics and fans both hated it. I personally think that Turbo wasn't as bad as people made it out to be, especially when you compare it to seasons that would come out later. But Saban actually considered canceling the show. He even revamped the entire cast in an attempt to save money and try to reinvigorate the franchise. It was expected that the next season of Power Rangers would be the last. Since Ninja Turtles was actually getting good ratings, Saban decided to do a crossover event between the Turtles and the Power Rangers. Power Rangers in Space would go on to be considered one of the greatest seasons in Power Rangers history. But this crossover episode titled Shell Shock is widely regarded as one of the worst episodes of that series. In this episode, Astronema abducts the Turtles and casts a spell on them, turning them evil. They pretend to team up with the Power Rangers, but all they are really trying to do is convince the Rangers to let them onto their ship. Once aboard, the Turtles are able to steal it. But after flying through a magnetic field, Astronema's spell is reversed and the Turtles turn good again, but the ship is about to self-destruct. Donatello is able to stop the ship from exploding, and the Turtles then track down the Rangers and help them defeat Astronema. At the end of the episode, the Turtles go space surfing and shout "Cowabunga," which was their catchphrase during the 1987 cartoon. This would be the only time that this iteration of Turtles would ever say "Cowabunga." It should also be pointed out that Next Mutation was filmed in Canada, but Power Rangers was filmed in the US, so the actors portraying the Turtles in this crossover are actually different people. New episodes of Next Mutation returned February 1998 with Unchain My Heart, a four-parter. Part 1 begins with a cool scene at a skate park where Bone Steel happens to be waiting to ambush the Turtles. He even has a shark cage hanging from the ceiling. It makes me wonder how long he had that shark cage hanging there, or if anyone else uses this park. As much as I enjoyed the skating, the scenes where the Turtles pretend to be trapped have to be some of the worst acting on this show so far. It is obvious that the Turtles can easily escape. They keep lifting the shark cage up and pretending to drop it. We are then shown a locked casket somewhere in China, where an evil vampire woman is resurrected. Her name is Vam Mai, and she was imprisoned by Venus's father Chung 70 years ago. It's revealed that Vam Mai needs to find her heart, or she will fade away within 4 days. Mai discovers that Venus has the heart, and she and her minions head to New York City to retrieve it. They are able to reach the city in just a few minutes because apparently vampires can fly so fast that they even leave trails behind them like the Power Rangers do. Mai is able to sense her heart, so she begins tracking the Turtles and finds them at the park where they are fighting Bone Steel. I'm really confused here because how did Mai find the Turtles? Since her heart was still back at the turtle lair, shouldn't her power to sense her heart have led her to the turtle lair and not directly to the Turtles? In part 2, Mai's minions spy on Bone Steel, hoping that he will lead them to the Turtles, which again makes no sense because Mai had no problem finding the Turtles earlier, and she has repeatedly said that her heart is calling to her. I mean, think about it. She was in China and could feel her heart calling her from there. But once she gets to the city, which is even closer to her heart, all of a sudden she can't feel it anymore. Eventually, the Turtles decide to give the heart back to the vampires, but Mai has to promise not to attack the Turtles anymore. This was such a stupid plan, probably the worst one that they have ever come up with so far. And of course, the vampires attack them. I'm starting to question what kind of heroes the Turtles are. They are willing to just let vampires roam the streets, and they never ever call the police when they beat up a bad guy. In part 3, Bonesteel shows up at the vampire's nest and tries to form an alliance. He's actually hiding in their room disguised as a chair. I don't understand how they didn't notice that there wasn't a chair there before. I have to admit that I'm starting to like Bonesteel. At first, I found him annoying, but his role in this episode is the only part that I actually enjoyed. Venus decides to face off against the vampires on her own, but when Venus fights them, she all of a sudden can't do magic anymore. She had no problem at the beginning of the season using it multiple times against the Foot Clan and the dragons, but now she apparently can't remember any spells. Bonesteel and Leo show up and get involved. The turtles retreat, and Bonesteel manages to take the heart. Leonardo reveals that he knows where Bonesteel lives. The turtles and the vampires race each other to Bonesteel's camp, where a giant battle ensues, and the vampires even set off fireworks for some unexplained reason. The turtles get the heart back, and Bonesteel captures the vampires. Part 4 begins with the vampires locked in a cage while Bonesteel waits for the sun to rise. Despite having been attacked by the vampires multiple times, Bonesteel finally makes an alliance with them. Donatello builds a bunch of anti-vampire weapons, and the turtles face off against the vampires again. But Donatello's weapons end up not working, and Bonesteel manages to capture all of the turtles except for Venus. It also just dawned on me that Mai said she was going to die in 4 days if she didn't get her heart back. So all the turtles had to do was just lay low for 4 days, and they would have won without doing anything at all. The turtles manage to trick Bonesteel and escape, while Mai does a ritual to summon her master, who appears as a glowing red orb and hasn't been mentioned at all until just now. This Dark Lord teleports Mai to the turtles' lair so that she can get her heart, but the turtles are there waiting for her. It's like they knew that she was going to magically teleport there. The turtles use a mirror to reflect sunlight onto Mai, which causes her to decompose. The episode ends with Venus talking about how proud she is to be growing as a shinobi and working with the turtles, even though she contributed pretty much nothing this entire 4-part episode. When I first saw these vampires, I had high hopes for this story arc, but it was awful. It's like the writers made no attempt whatsoever to make a believable story. It's never explained why all of a sudden Venus can't do magic, or who this Dark Lord is that helped Mai, or how the turtles just happened to be expecting her to show up. I also never mentioned it until now, but I find it so weird that Mai's minions are child vampires, and I know it's a kid's show, but why even have vampires if they aren't going to bite anyone? We had a 4-part vampire story and not a single person was bitten. The next episode is called Mutant Reflections and features the return of Dr. Keese. It begins with an in-depth conversation between Raphael and Michelangelo over who's better, Batman or Superman.
He's got powers. The dude can't run a train. It doesn't matter. Batman gets some kryptonite and shoves it in Superman's smug face.
Later, Donatello is testing out his mobile GPS when Raphael walks up and attacks him. Donatello returns to the lair and confronts Raphael, but Ralph hasn't left the lair, so it couldn't have been him. It turns out that Dr. Quace has been working on clones of the turtles, and he also has robots that are gathering DNA samples of the other turtles. The turtles discover this robot and know it has something to do with the Raphael clone. They follow it to Dr. Quace's lab, where they're attacked by a Donatello clone. Donatello trades places with the clone and infiltrates Quace's lab. He is quickly caught, and the rest of the turtles come to his rescue. Also, the clones have a plug on their back, and all the turtles have to do to defeat the clones is just unplug them. That's it. That's it. Like, literally, that's it. I feel like this is the weakest episode yet, and that's saying a lot after watching a 4-parter about vampires that don't even bite. In the next episode, Wick is mixing a potion, and the Dragon Lord makes Wick drink it. The potion ends up making Wick a lot stronger, and Wick attacks the Dragon Lord and declares himself King Wick, the new leader of the dragons, and he attacks any member of the dragon rank that refused to support him. Wick and the dragons attack the turtles, but of course the turtles are still easily able to beat them. Back at the lair, the turtles appear to be exhausted after their fight, even though they seem to have no problem whatsoever winning. At first, I kind of liked this episode because of how it was focused on the dragons instead of the turtles, but then it started to get sillier. At one point, the dragons build a throne for Wick, and it's literally a toilet. The turtles and Wick face off again, and Leo realizes that his sword can deflect Wick's laser eyes, which causes him to lose all his powers, and the Dragon Lord once again gains control of the rank. At this point, I'm starting to see why this show is so despised by fans. Initially, I didn't mind all the cartoony slapstick behavior, but now that the nostalgia has worn off, it's really gotten old. I'm actually starting to miss Silver and Bone Steel. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, the next episode is a clip show. Like, for real. Does Next Mutation really need a clip show? So at the beginning of the episode, Leo and Ralph are sparring, but then their training escalates into an actual fight. After the fight's over, the turtles reminisce about all the adventures they have gotten into this year. I know the budget was tight, but there is no way a clip show was needed. I think the main reason for this episode was the writers were just completely out of ideas. And watching the clip show made me realize how formulaic these shows have gotten. It seems like every episode features a battle where the turtles retreat and then later come up with a plan to win at the end. Also, it made me realize how weaker Venus has gotten. If you remember at the beginning of the show, she was unstoppable. She single-handedly beat all of the turtles and beat the Shredder in less than 10 seconds. Now it seems like she can hardly do any magic. Oh, and the episode ends with Venus telling Ralph and Leo that they are both wrong.
Childish, and you're both wrong.
Say what?
Excuse me?
And then all of a sudden the turtles are friends again, just like that. The next episode is called Going Ape, and I thought that given the title, Silver might be coming back, but no, this was a Bone Steel episode. In the cold open, Ralph is driving his motorcycle when Bone Steel appears and chases after him. Ralph is able to get away by disguising himself with a newspaper. Ralph leads Bone Steel to an abandoned house where Bone Steel catches him. There's a lot going on here. While Ralph is about to be attacked by Bone Steel, a gorilla saves him. The dragons then also show up and a fight breaks out between all of them. At one point, Bone Steel and Ralph even team up. Going Ape is the only episode of Next Mutation so far that has focused exclusively on one turtle. I know there have been episodes that centered on Venus, but with the exception of one or two scenes, Raphael is the only turtle that really does anything here, and I kind of like it. The fact that he has to work with Bone Steel makes it really interesting, especially when you consider that Ralph is kind of a loner. If you haven't noticed, whenever the turtles jump in the Humvee, Ralph follows separately on his motorcycle. At the end of the episode, the ape scares off all the dragons, and Bone Steel is about to kill the ape, but Raphael stops him, and Ralph and the ape become friends. I wasn't crazy about how quickly Bone Steel and Ralph went back to being enemies, but overall it was a decent episode. Episode 21 is called The Guest and begins with Splinter meeting his blind chess buddy Andre. Andre informs Splinter that he is now homeless, so Splinter invites him to move into the sewers. As they're moving, Andre runs into Dr. Queese and accidentally picks up Dr. Queese's cane. Most of the humor in this episode revolves around Andre being blind. He has no idea that he's living with turtles in the sewer. I love the scene where Ralph is trying to sleep, but he can't because it turns out Andre snores.
That's it. I can't take it anymore. It's quieter on the streets of New York.
Dr. Queese eventually finds Andre and gets his cane back, but Queese is attacked by the turtles who show up to help Andre. I love this episode, and it really shows that you don't need a lot of action sequences for the Ninja Turtles to be interesting. Just having the gang hang out in the sewer was fun enough. The next episode once again features Dr. Queese, who gets into an argument with the Dragon Lord after Queese seemingly helps the turtles escape. Despite everything that has gone on, Donatello still idolizes Queese. When Splinter finds out that Donatello has stolen some books from Queese's lab, he demands that Donatello return them. That makes no sense to me. I feel like if someone is evil and trying to take over the world, that stealing information about their experiments is not that big of a deal. Donnie eventually strikes up a friendship with Dr. Queese, and the two start conducting experiments together. Donatello believes that he's helping Queese develop a way to teleport the dragons back to the mirror world, but he realizes that Queese plans on just using the technology for his own benefit. The turtles confront Queese and eventually destroy the technology so that no one can have it. Although what Donatello did seems noble, they literally destroyed research that could have defeated the dragons once and for all. Episode 23 is called The Good Dragon and begins with Venus and Raphael playing laser tag against one another, but a dragon sneaks up and almost kills Venus. She is rescued by another dragon and comes to believe that some of the dragons might actually be good. The Dragon Lord discovers that there is a traitor in his army, and he plans to find out who this dragon is and send them back to the mirror dimension. Venus returns to the laser tag arena where the good dragon seems to live. When Venus arrives, members of the ranks show up attempting to capture the good dragon, but Venus helps him escape. The good dragon reveals to Venus that the dragons used to be good, but the Dragon Lord turned everyone evil. The good dragon takes Raphael hostage and plans to hand him over to the Dragon Lord and ask for forgiveness. The good dragon then changes his mind and lets Raphael go. He returns to the Dragon Lord and allows himself to be imprisoned for his crimes. This episode is deep. I hate to say it, but this good dragon is the most fully developed character in this entire show, and he doesn't even have a real name. In Sewer Crash, Donatello's computer brainwashes him into going out and robbing a jewelry store. The whole thing turns out to be a plan by Silver, which seems extremely unbelievable because Silver seems to barely know how computers work to begin with, but he somehow managed to not only hack Donatello's computer, but also hypnotize him. Ralph wakes up in the middle of the night and catches Donnie leaving to go rob another jewelry store. But instead of following him, Ralph just goes back to sleep. I know the concept of this episode is stupid and I shouldn't like it, but it's actually not that bad. Once again, Ralph catches Donnie leaving to rob a store, but this time he actually follows him and pieces together what's happening. It seems like even though Leo is supposed to be the leader of the Turtles, it's actually Ralph that's always going out of his way to help everyone. Episode 25 is called The Enemy of My Enemy, and it begins with a huge plot twist. Splinter finds a homeless man being attacked and rescues him. The homeless man turns out to be Oroko Saki, the former Shredder. The Turtles attempt to put their differences aside and befriend the Shredder. Meanwhile, the dragons are out looking for him because they believe Shredder has an ancient object that will help them defeat the Turtles. It's called the Shellicon, and it's unclear what exactly this object does and why the Shredder never used it. But now, after being reminded of the Shellicon by Splinter, the Shredder finally decides to put it to use. The dragons catch up to the Shredder and steal it. But Shredder is rescued by the Turtles, and again, if this object is so powerful, why hasn't the Shredder ever used it? He's homeless, yet somehow he still has this extremely valuable ancient object of immense power. At the end of the episode, Shredder once again attacks the Turtles and steals the Shellicon back, and the episode ends in kind of a cliffhanger, but the cliffhanger is never resolved because the next episode would end up being both the season and series finale. It's called Who Needs Her, and begins with the Turtles practicing magic, but then it turns out to be just another clip show. Yeah, that's right, the season finale. The last live-action episode of The Turtles was a clip show. So basically, the Turtles reflect on all the times that Venus has gotten them into trouble. And while this is going on, Venus is being attacked by the dragons and is captured. Eventually, the Turtles figure out that Venus has been captured and try to rescue her, but are surprised to find out that Venus was able to escape all on her own. And that's it. That's how the show ends. After watching every one of these episodes, I can honestly say that I've seen worse. especially when it comes to kids shows, but wow, I can't believe how badly Saban fumbled this show. I mean, really, 2 clip shows in one season. I love the live action movies mainly because of how darker they were compared to the cartoon. I know that the critics hated it, but the first Turtle film was the very first VHS tape I ever owned, and I've seen it 100 times. I mean, there's a fight in that movie where an apartment building is collapsing around them, but the turtles just keep right on fighting. Allegedly, when the fourth movie failed to enter production, Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, who were the creators of the Ninja Turtles, were desperate to keep the turtles on the air. So they pretty much agreed to anything Saban wanted to do. It was apparently Saban's idea to have the fifth turtle be a female, since the Power Rangers and Beetleborgs always had a female member. Venus gets a lot of hate, and some people blame her for the show's failure, but I didn't find her all that bad. I hated that she had magic powers, but having an extra turtle wasn't what ruined it. Another big criticism of the show is that the turtles aren't actually brothers. When Venus shows up, the turtles make it clear that even though they were purchased from the same pet store years ago, they aren't actually blood relatives. It's generally accepted that this was done to allow for a possible romantic relationship between Venus and Leonardo. I think that the show was doomed from the start, and would have been a lot better if the stories were darker like they were in the movies. But this was a kids' show, so everything was toned down to the point that it was just as silly as the cartoon. Also, you may not have noticed, but in this show, the turtles are never referred to as teenage mutants. It's not even in the main titles, they're simply called Ninja Turtles. This was done because the producers wanted to make the turtles appear more grown up. But if that was the goal, then why did they make the turtles so immature in the first place? Fox also wasn't making as much money off of the show because apparently they didn't actually own the license to the Ninja Turtles. The ratings weren't that bad overall, but they were also not good enough for Fox to keep investing in it. That's ultimately why they decided to cancel it. It just wasn't profitable enough. And the budget for the show was expected to be even higher for season 2. According to the writers, season 2 would have had April and Casey Jones return to the show. I feel like they should have been there from the start. I mean, if you really think about it, Saban didn't need to add a female turtle. April was kind of already the female member of the team. The second season was also supposed to have Shredder team up with the Dragons, but I'm not sure how well that would have worked, given how weak and pathetic they made the Shredder look. If this show had come out 10 or 15 years later on CW, I think it would have fit in better with shows like Arrow, Smallville, and The Flash. If it had been marketed as a teen show and not a kid's show, they could have introduced darker storylines but still kept the comedy. In doing research for this video, I discovered something very cool. During the show's production, there were letters posted on NinjaTurtles.com from the Turtles. Each couple of months, 5 new letters were posted, one for each turtle. Each letter talked about the various things that had been happening to them. For example, the first letter was posted and written by Donatello and talks about meeting Venus for the first time and how he can't wait to study her DNA. The amazing thing is that after the show was canceled, someone kept writing these letters until 2007, almost 10 years after the final episode aired. Another strange thing is that the US DVD release contains a different theme song.
We're fantastic, never panic.
This isn't uncommon with DVD releases. Sometimes there are rights issues which prevent certain music from being used, so most people assume that's what happened here. But there's a music video included on one of the DVDs, and the music video is the original theme song. So if they could include the music video of the theme song, then shouldn't they have also been able to put the original theme song at the beginning of each episode? After the show's cancellation, it would be 5 years before the Ninja Turtles ever came back to TV. But ever since 2003, it seems like there has been a never-ending stream of Turtles merchandise. But there has still never been another live-action TV series. Regardless of how good or bad this show was, I was glad to finally watch all of the episodes. If you have any thoughts on Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation, please feel free to comment, and as always, thank you for watching.